Hey traders, welcome back to the weekly Forex Forecast. Last week we had US CPI out on the Thursday and it came out soft across the board. And because of that, we finally got some volatility in the dollar. You can see it was very, very tight going into this. And we had a big sell-off in the DXY. On the Friday, we even got some hotter than expected PPI data, and yet we still had a pretty solid down day. So it really shows that US CPI took precedent last week. That was the big story and the driver of the sell-off in the dollar. Now, coming into this week, you can see that the dollar is breaking down. And what's important to note is we're starting to get softer CPI in the US alongside the unemployment rate widening. If you remember on the Friday, we did see a jump in the unemployment rate. And what happens is when you start to get deteriorating data, so you see inflation coming down, which in and of itself is not a bad thing, but when it's combined with a weakening labor market, you tend to see this at the end of cycles heading into recessionary periods. And what happens is the 2-year yield falls. This causes the dollar to sell off. And usually the dollar sells off for a period of time before a flight to safety kicks in. Now, it's too early to say whether we're in a pre-flight to safety sell-off. However, it is something to bear in mind as we go through the next few weeks. And usually you get about 3 to 5% down in the dollar sharply. So that'll be one of the things to look for over the next few weeks. Do we get a continued sharp sell-off in the dollar? If so, that does point towards evidence of that kind of pre-flight safety mechanics in the dollar kicking in as yields fall. And then usually, 3 to 5% after the dollar sells off, that's when you tend to get a sharp reversal in the dollar. You get that classic flight safety. So it'll be interesting to see if we do get that over the next few weeks. Having said that, going into next week, I do think the US dollar is likely to continue lower, and we could see the dollar lower for at least a couple of weeks. So moving on to the portfolio selection, the first thing to jump out at me is the Japanese yen off the bottom. This has been rock bottom of the performance metrics, and we've seen a jump, a troughing of the performance metrics of the yen. And this was because we had the soft CPI data come out. As soon as we get that, we get money coming out of the US dollar into the Japanese yen. And it also looks like at the same time, the Ministry of Finance in Japan used that soft CPI print to intervene in the yen. And we may now be looking at the actual reversal coming into the yen. We've had a couple of false starts where there's been intervention. The yen has strengthened somewhat and then it's rolled over again. So it'll be interesting to see if the yen can hold this, but that intervention last week and in prior weeks is the reason why we haven't been looking at the Japanese yen in the weekly Forex forecast, and I haven't been trading it to the short side myself because I didn't want to be on the wrong side of that. If we start to see the Japanese yen moving into the positive side of the performance metrics, this is going to give us the opportunity to buy the yen, because then we are trading with the Ministry of Finance wind in our sails. We are not trading against it. And any kind of intervention should benefit us if we're short-term buying the yen. So coming into this week, the yen is kind of off the table still. However, it's interesting to note this may be coming back into play over the next couple of weeks. To the short side, I like the Swiss franc as the number one short heading into this week, followed by the New Zealand dollar as the second best short idea, followed by the Canadian dollar as the third best short idea. And to the long side, I like the pound, the euro, and also the Australian dollar. We are seeing the Australian dollar peak in the performance metrics. It's been the number one long idea, has greatly outperformed, done very, very well. However, we are starting to see the performance metrics slip and actually weaken. And although the Aussie dollar is pushing higher, this does tend to very often lead. It is also coincident at times, but it does also lead the currencies higher and lower. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a continued decline over the Australian dollar over the next couple of weeks. And the final thing is then the US dollar. So we have a pretty clear 1, 2, 3 to the long side, 1, 2, 3 to the short side we can trade off this week. And that really leaves the US dollar in the middle, which is kind of neutral and getting weaker in the performance metrics. So again, based on what we discussed with the US CPI last week, I do think we're going to get continued downside. So on balance, I have a kind of bearish bias in the US dollar. And we can look at a couple of dollar pairs as well. Euro dollar we look at every week. We'll throw in pound dollar to the upside. I'd be interested in if we can get a pullback. And also gold and silver. It does give me on balance a slightly bullish bias in gold and silver, because if the dollar's going to continue to sell off in the near term, then that should be supportive of both gold and silver. Okay, so kicking off the watch list with crude oil, as I always do. Last week, this was a market I was looking to buy or do nothing. And in fact, this was probably one of the best trades I took last week. I bought it down here, posted this to members, and we got about 2% out of this. It was a really nice long opportunity right from the lower bound. I mean, we traded below it, and then we got that rally. This was the kind of bounce we're looking for. I didn't capture all of this, but this is the kind of bounce you get very often when you trade above or below these upper and lower bounds. Usually 7 times out of 10, the market will close the week back inside here. So going into this week, I do favor long opportunities in crude oil once again. It's actually sort of a neutral market, but I prefer to buy at the lows personally. So any pullback in this market this week, I'm once again looking for a breach of the 80.2361. If we do start to break down, there's a nice low over here for kind of confirmation of this support. You could test this, and now you're in an area where you're essentially oversold on the week and you're testing a previous support. I like those opportunities. So I would be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in crude oil, given the opportunity. If we break through here and we breach this level, you now have roughly a 95% chance of pausing or reversing higher based on market probabilities. And so this would be the second place I'd be looking for a long opportunity next week in crude oil. Now, sometimes when it trades down to this level, I'm already involved in a long and it's not working. And so I get involved here, pushes all the way down. I usually cost average it. And as we bounce, I tend to exit those positions. So the third and final setup you can look for next week, you do usually get in the 4-hour time frame as I go through in the YouTube video every Saturday with you guys. You tend to get 1 or 2 kind of bull or bear flag opportunities in a week in the 4-hour time frame. So if you do get, and not every asset gets this opportunity, but if you do see a rally with momentum and a flag, you can look for that 4-hour setup into the 84.42. So I'm only looking to be a buyer or doing nothing in this market. Selling it is not an option for me next week. And those are the 3 opportunities I'll be looking for, not just in crude oil, but in all of these assets as we go through today's video. Okay, so kicking off the Forex pairs, starting with the pound long theme that I'm looking at next week. And I favor it against the franc, one of the most, because the Swiss franc is a very good short in the hedge dash algorithm. So any pullback in pound franc next week is going to be viewed as the opportunity to see if we can get a breach for the 1.15166. What I really like about this is you can see we have a prior kind of top over here, this kind of consolidation. We're kind of consolidating and then we break through it. And so any pullback and a retest of this is simply a kind of stair step technically. And at the same time, you've got the added benefit of the 1.15166, or really it's the other way around. You've got the oversold on the week with very, very good odds of reversing, and you've got the added benefit of trading into a prior high. So that is definitely going to be a setup I'm interested in next week, looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal, as I always do throughout the week with members. And the second thing I'm going to be looking for is if we breach this and we come all the way down to the 1.1417, I may or may not already be in a trade, but this would be the second place I'll be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in pound franc. And lastly, if we get a very strong market and we fail to take out the lower bound, instead we just break out with momentum, you can look for that bull flag setup into the 1.1715. And above here is going to be a great place to book any profits on any intra-week longs. Cannot sell this market next week. I can only be a buyer or do nothing in pound franc. Next is pound New Zealand. Again, I can either buy it or do nothing. Selling this is not an option. And look at the momentum in this. Why would you want to sell this? It would make no sense. Very, very nice momentum. What I'd like to see then is I'd like to see this pull back, consolidate below the 2.10539. And that actually sets up this kind of big bull flag setup. You see the momentum and then the flag. And if we start to breach this level, I'm going to be looking for a slowing of momentum on lower time frames. And I'm going to be looking for those reversals for 1 or 2 days to the upside. The second thing I'm looking for is if for whatever reason we sell all the way down to the 2.08828, this would be the second place I'd be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal below this level, whether I'm not already involved in an initial position. And the third thing as always is if you start to pull back, but it's a strong market, it's a fast market, you can't test the lower bound, instead you just start to break up with momentum, I'll be looking for that consolidation. And you can look for the follow through into the upper bound of 2.1396. Once you get above here, the odds of continuing drop to about 30%. So it's a very good profit taking opportunity once you're above this level if you're already involved in a long position. Next is pound CAD. Again, I can either buy it or do nothing. Selling this is not an option for me. And if you take the prior high, we've got this consolidation. Look how strong this momentum is. Very, very small kind of pullback, but really this is all one move. And this suggests to me, like with the other pound pairs, actually the pound has seen very, very, very strong moves to the upside, probably needs a breather, needs to pause. And if we do get that, if we start to pull back, we have the prior high over here, this major high as well. So we're kind of, again, stair-stepping. There's your pullback. You break this high, kind of pull back and retest it. So below the 1.75887, this looks like a great place next week for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside. I will be looking for that throughout the week. And the second place I'd be looking for potential buying opportunity is 1.7467. So if we start to trade below here, especially if we trade below here with strength, we trade into this low. Now, if we did that, that is a pretty strong move, you know, suggestive often of a reversal. But if we do that, especially if I'm already involved, I would be looking for a second position to try and cost average risk manage that to the upside. If you're not involved, these lower bounds, these second lower bounds or upper bounds are very good initial positions because you do often get the reversal. And the third thing you can look for then again is this kind of bull flag breakouts. You get the consolidation. You break out without taking out the lower bound. You can look for the consolidation, the rally into the 1.7831. And actually, you can really overlay any type of strategy. I like to buy above and below the upper and lower bounds, but you can overlay any strategy onto these. I mean, if you like, you know, moving average crossover strategies, let's say. I don't use that. Let's say you use that. You know, once you get that in the pairs which are outlined as having the higher probability of continuing higher, you know, you can look for those intra-week stuff. The second theme we're going to look at then is the Australian dollar long theme, starting with Aussie franc, as the Swiss franc is the top short idea in the hedge dash algorithm heading into this week. So any pullback in this market, I'm going to be looking for preferably a breach of the 0.60104. There's a nice low down here and a high here. So we've got that kind of high and the low testing. So if we come back with breaches, especially if we test this area, this is going to be a great place to look for momentum to slow, lower time frames. And I'm going to be looking for that 1 or 2 day reversal that we look for every single week. If we break through there, and again, whether I'm already long or not, the second place I'd be looking for, and there's a nice, again, you have the same thing where you've got this kind of high and you've got the low, forms this kind of support and resistance zone down here. And again, this is just confluence. It just adds to the probabilities of bouncing at these levels if you get that around these levels. But if we do breach the 0.5956, this would be the second place I'll be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside. And finally, if we start to pull back but we fail to get to the lower bound, instead we get a strong rally to the upside, you can look for that bull flag setup intra-week into the 0.6118. The next pair in the Aussie long theme I'm looking at is Aussie New Zealand. This was a buy or do nothing last week, and we had that big move to the upside, you can see. And again, coming into this week, it's a buy or do nothing. I cannot sell this market. So any pullback in this asset, I'm going to be looking for a breach of the 1.10183. If we get that, I'm going to be looking for that 1 or 2 day reversal, dropping down, looking for reversal patterns, momentum starting to fade on 15-minute, 5-minute time frames. And I'm looking for that reversal for 1 or 2 days up. If we breach this and we come all the way down to the 1.0947, whether I'm involved already in a long position here or not, I would consider a second position to the upside. And the third setup you can look for is if you fail to come down, you just get strength and you get that intra-week breakout. Of course, that bull flag opportunity is potentially there reactively, because you may not see this, but if you do, you can, take that, and this is what those kind of Fibonacci traders like to trade, those kind of bull flag setups into the 1.11597. And the final Aussie pair is Aussie CAD. Now, again, you can see this has been very choppy, but we're starting to see outperformance. We're making higher highs, high lows. We're trending to the upside. And really, these are some of the best markets. We're really looking for those trending to the upside markets, trending to the downside. And the portfolio selection process, of course, does that for us. But Aussie CAD is a market I'm looking at only to the upside next week. So what I'd like to see is us come all the way down to the 0.91782. Test this low, this high, there's a couple of highs over here, coming into this area, slowing down with momentum, and very often that sees a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside that I'll be looking for. If we breach this and we come all the way down to the 0.91054, most of the time you won't test these lower bounds. Most of the time you'll just test the first upper and lower bounds. But if you do break through here, whether you're long or not, and you test this area here, this is a great place for an initial position or for a cost average of an initial losing position, if you got involved here, for example, and it comes all the way down. And the third thing I'll be looking for is if you can get that breakout intra-week, you can look for those bull flag / Fibonacci setups into the 0.93238. Moving on to the next theme, which is the Euro long theme. Now, something to note with next week is we have the ECB meeting on Thursday, and very often this makes those kind of currencies where you've got that big news event low volatility during the week. There's a good chance that the euro pairs don't do much lean into Thursday, and then they start to move on Thursday. And with the dollar being 57% of the dollar index, you may actually see that causing low volatility in the dollar as well. However, I can either be a buyer of this or do nothing next week. So what I'll be looking for is, I'm primarily looking for euro franc to come down, breach the 0.9697, perhaps even this low. And if it can do this before Thursday, this is going to be great, because especially if this happens, say Monday or Tuesday, there's a good chance that you reverse back inside here leading into the ECB decision on Thursday. So I'm going to be looking for that. If we breach through here and we gap close over here below the 0.9639, this will be the second place next week. I'd consider a long opportunity, and you probably, will only see this if you get a negative catalyst coming out of the ECB. So you're probably not going to come down to the 0.9639, unless you see a bearish reaction from the euro after the interest rate decision. But a breach of this level, I would consider potentially fading that to the upside. And the final thing then is, and this is unlikely to happen before Thursday, but if you get a hawkish outcome, you get a bullish response from the euro, you can look for the breakout after the ECB and the bull flag setup into the 0.9814. Next is Euro New Zealand. Now, with the euro interest rate decision on Thursday, I expect low volatility throughout the week. And what would be fantastic is if we can pull back early in the week, Monday or Tuesday, test the 1.76866. This would be a great range trade opportunity into Thursday for 1 or 2 days reversal. If we breach this and we come all the way down to the 1.75492, maybe test these lows, this would be a second place I'd be interested in buying Euro New Zealand. And again, this is probably only going to happen if we get a weak reaction from the euro after Thursday's ECB. Very unlikely that happens before ECB. Very, very, very unlikely. And the third thing, of course, if we get a positive reaction, so we get a negative reaction, we come all the way down here, but if we get a positive reaction, you could see this blasting high straight away, and that gives you your opportunity to look for that bull flag Fibonacci setup into the 1.7961. I'm not a user of Fibonacci at the moment, but it is something I know many people like. Next is EurCad. Again, nice momentum to the upside. There's no reason for me to be looking for anything other than a long position in this market next week. What I'd like to see then is I'd like to see this pull back and flag, breach the 1.47530. And if it does this Monday or Tuesday, this is going to be a fantastic range trading opportunity into and ahead of Thursday's ECB. So it rallies, holds the range, and then you can exit before the interest rate decision. If we blast through here, probably on weakness after ECB, and we start to trade below the 1.4634, this would be the second place I'd be looking for a potential long opportunity next week. And the third thing you can look for, as always, is another. There's one there. Breakout, pull back, rally. Breakout, pull back, rally. Breakout, pull back. You can look for that breakout, consolidation, and momentum rally into the 1.49908. And again, that will probably only happen, this kind of momentum setup probably only happens after Thursday with a strong or positive response from the euro. Next is euro dollar. Now again, next week I can be a buyer or do nothing. I do think the dollar heads much higher probably over the back end of this year and heading into next year. However, as it currently stands going into next week, based on that very soft CPI, I think we get continued sell-off in the dollar on balance. So any pullback in this market next week, preferably if we can breach the 1.0833 Monday or Tuesday, this is going to be a great potential range trade for 1 or 2 days back inside this range ahead of the ECB on Thursday. The second thing I'll be looking for is if we come all the way down to the 1.07605, and again, this would probably be on a sell-off after the ECB. This would be the second place I'd be looking for a potential 1 or 2 day reversal. And if we just break out with momentum because of a bullish reaction from the euro on the ECB on Thursday, then I would be looking, potentially you can look for that breakout intra-week and that kind of bull flag setup into the 1.0978. And the final thing we can look at really, I guess, is US dollar short, because we can look at the pound to the upside, the strongest currency versus a potentially continuing weaker US dollar. And at the same time, I do favor longs in both gold and silver, and those are also kind of part of the US dollar short theme heading into next week. So any pullback in the pound, and this does look like it needs to pull back. We've had very, very, very strong moves to the upside, and these markets don't move in a straight line. They need to pause, they need to breathe. And if we do get that pullback next week, I'm going to be looking for a trade down below the 1.2888. And I don't mean trading this short into this level. I mean if we come down and we sell off below this level, especially if we come back, say, and test this high. It's a really nice stair-step opportunity. Breaks above this high, pulls back, breaches this level, tests this high. This is where I'll be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in pound dollar. The second thing, if we sold all the way off, I don't see why this would happen. It would have to be something quite unexpected. But if we did come all the way down to the 1.2781 for whatever reason, whether I'm long or not, this would be the second place. Below here, I'd be looking for a 1 or 2 day reversal. And if we continue to get very, very strong moves in pound dollar and we pull back, but we don't manage to come all the way down to the lower bound, you can look for that intra-week bull flag breakout into the 1.3102. Okay, so wrapping up the video with gold and silver, a continuation really of the dollar short theme. I do favor long positions in both of them, and I favor long positions in silver over gold. However, if we do get a pullback in gold next week and we breach the 2366.94, it's going to be a great place to look for a 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside in gold. If we break this for whatever reason, come all the way down to the 2322.77 and take out these lows, and I don't think this is likely, but it's always nice to have that in the back pocket. If we do break down, especially if you're already long, if we do break down, this is a great place to risk manage or for an initial position for 1 or 2 days to the upside below the 2322.77. And as always, if you get that kind of pullback and you get a strong market and you don't test the lower bound, instead you get the breakout intra-week, you can look for that rally, that bull flag setup into the 2455.27. If you breach this level, it's going to be a great intra-week profit-taking opportunity for any long positions in gold. And last but certainly not least is silver. I can be a buyer of silver or do nothing next week. I cannot short silver. So what I want to see is I want to see silver pull back, breach the 29.59. And this is where I'll start to look for momentum to fade, reversal patterns on lower time frames, looking for that 1 or 2 day reversal to the upside. If we breach this, we come down, break these lows and test the 28.39. This would be the second place I would consider a long opportunity. Whether I'm already long once or not, this would be a great place for a second opportunity to buy silver next week. And if we just continue down, but we fail to reach the lower bound, the setup you can look for is that intra-week breakout, that bull flag, Fibonacci setup, if you like, into the 31.99. So that is it from me for today, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, why not consider joining us in the GMT training room each day, where I look at the best markets, as well as sharing real-time setups that I'm personally looking at trading with members as part of our GMT training program. Don't forget, you can also get a 2-week free trial to the cutting-edge Hedge-trading app used in today's video by heading over to www.hedge-.com.